It was a typical morning at Westbrook High School, a quiet suburban campus where everything seemed routine until Jerry Walters showed up. The flagpole at the front of the school had been leaning to one side for weeks, a glaring eyesore no one seemed to care about. And yet there Jerry was, an older janitor in his late 50s dressed in a worn-out uniform, trying to fix it. His efforts were met with laughter. Students filmed him laughing behind his back, while some teachers just shook their heads. To them, Jerry was nothing more than an old man doing a menial job. They didn't know who he really was. No one did. What they didn't understand was that Jerry wasn't just a janitor. He was a man with a past that would make anyone think twice before laughing at him. Jerry Walters had been working as a janitor at Westbrook High for nearly 2 decades, but his unassuming appearance and quiet nature often made him invisible to most. At 58, with a weathered face marked by years of hard work, his hair was thin and peppered with gray, and his eyes, though sharp, held a certain weariness. His uniform, a faded blue jumpsuit, was always slightly too big, as though it had been handed down through the years. It was a far cry from the polished suits of the business world, yet Jerry didn't mind. He never sought attention or recognition. The only thing that seemed to matter to him was getting his work done, even if it was something as simple as fixing a broken flagpole. Though the other staff at the school might have dismissed him as just another old man who cleaned floors and fixed broken things, Jerry had a history far more complex. In his youth, Jerry had served in the military, a decorated soldier with multiple tours under his belt. But his past was a well-kept secret he'd never talked about. It never boasted. The flagpole wasn't just another job to him. It was a symbol of his life, his commitment to service, and his unspoken respect for duty. Yet to everyone at the school, he was just Jerry the janitor. It was an identity that he never tried to change, but one that in time would prove to be far more significant than they could ever imagine. As Jerry Walters painstakingly worked on the flagpole, the reactions from the students and teachers were immediate and far from sympathetic. To the students, Jerry was a laughingstock, an old man who seemed out of place in their fast-paced world. Some of the more daring teenagers gathered in small groups, laughing behind their phones as they recorded Jerry struggling with the pole. They whispered to each other, making jokes about how the school should just hire a real handyman. One student, Ethan, a popular athlete, elbowed his friends and muttered, "He looks like he's been working here forever. Think he's ever going to finish that?" The group snickered as they continued to make light of Jerry's attempts. A few teachers, though, less vocal, exchanged glances from their classrooms. Mrs. Carter, a young, energetic history teacher, raised an eyebrow as she watched Jerry working from her window. She was known for her sharp wit, but she didn't understand why the school couldn't just hire someone more qualified for this task. "He's been here for so long," she commented to a colleague, Mr. Ross. "But why is he still fixing things like this? Shouldn't we be getting professionals for this stuff?" "Mr." Ross nodded, glancing at Jerry with a shrug. "He's probably just passing time, I guess. Not like he's going anywhere anytime soon." The students weren't the only ones dismissing Jerry's efforts. The teachers' reactions were similarly indifferent. There was a pervasive undercurrent of disrespect for the work Jerry was doing, as if he was somehow beneath their notice. Most didn't bother to approach him, let alone offer any assistance. After all, what was the point of helping an old man who was merely the school janitor? Even the school principal, Mr. Thompson, walked past without so much as a word, giving Jerry a quick glance before heading into his office. Jerry wasn't even a blip on their radar, just another part of the school's invisible machinery. What they didn't know, what none of them realized, was that Jerry had seen much worse than a little mockery. He'd faced hardships, endured the most difficult trials a man could imagine, and somehow kept going. But in that moment, as he worked alone under the midday sun, he didn't flinch at their dismissive attitudes. He simply kept at it, his hands steady, his focus unwavering. This flagpole meant something to him, even if it meant nothing to them. The day passed slowly for Jerry, the weight of the mockery hanging around him like a cloud. He was used to it by now, the side glances, the chuckles from behind his back, the dismissive remarks. But today something was different. As the sun began to dip behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the school grounds, Jerry heard the soft chime of his old cell phone ringing in his pocket. He paused, wiping the sweat from his brow, as he reached into his faded overalls and pulled out the phone. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, the digits flashing in a way that sent a brief jolt of unease through his chest. Jerry almost didn't answer. At his age, the number of telemarketing calls he received seemed endless, and he wasn't in the mood to deal with any of them. But something about the number seemed Important. He pressed the green button and held the phone up to his ear. Hello. He grunted, his voice rough from the day's work. For a moment there was only silence on the other end, and Jerry was about to hang up when a voice finally spoke. Is this Jerry Walters? The voice was sharp, authoritative, and familiar, though Jerry couldn't quite place it. Yeah, who's this? Jerry asked, wiping his brow once more, and shifting his weight on the ladder, still precariously balanced on the edge of the school's flagpole. I'm General William Armstrong. The voice continued, steady and clear. I need you to listen carefully. I'm calling on behalf of the Pentagon, and I need you to stand by. The name General Armstrong didn't immediately ring a bell for Jerry, but the mention of the Pentagon took him by surprise. Pentagon, what's this about? He asked, the mockery from earlier fading as confusion and curiosity took its place. I'm sure you're wondering why a general from the Pentagon is calling a janitor. The voice continued, a slight chuckle in his tone. But I'll get straight to the point. The work you're doing on that flagpole, it's more than just a job. The flag you're fixing, it's not just a symbol to us. It's vital. I need you to finish what you're doing and do it right, no matter the cost. Jerry's heart skipped a beat. He'd been working on the same flagpole for years, countless repairs, countless frustrations. But this was something entirely different. The general's tone was serious, the weight of the words heavy in the air between them. Sir, I don't know what you mean. I'm just trying to get this flag back up, Jerry replied, his voice filled with confusion. I'm not sure what's so special about this old thing. General Armstrong paused for a moment before responding, his voice steady. You don't understand yet, Jerry, but you will. The work you're doing today is being watched. It's been watched for years. And trust me, you're about to play a much bigger role in this than you ever expected. Jerry's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. The idea that something as simple as fixing a flagpole could be important enough for the Pentagon to get involved was incomprehensible. But as the general's words echoed in his mind, Jerry couldn't ignore the feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. The general's voice dropped to a more solemn tone. I need you to finish what you started, Jerry. And when you do, don't let anyone stop you. You'll understand soon enough. Before Jerry could respond, the line went dead, the sudden silence ringing in his ear. He stood frozen for a moment, staring at the phone, the mystery of the call hanging heavy in the air. What had just happened? Was this some kind of joke? Or was there more to his simple, humble job than he had ever realized? The sun continued to set behind him, but for Jerry, the world seemed to have shifted on its axis. The flagpole he'd been fixing for hours now held a different meaning, and Jerry Walters, janitor, handyman, invisible man, was suddenly thrust into something much bigger than he could have imagined. Jerry stood at the base of the flagpole, the tension in his shoulders tight as he looked up at the frayed edges of the flag. His mind was still spinning from the phone call, the words echoing in his ears. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the school grounds bathed in the amber glow of streetlights. He tried to focus on the task at hand, just finish the job, get the flag back up. But deep down, something was gnawing at him, telling him that the events of the day weren't over yet. That's when it happened. The sound of a sleek black SUV rolling slowly across the parking lot broke Jerry from his thoughts. He glanced up, squinting against the growing darkness. At first, he didn't think much of it. Probably just another car leaving, maybe a late-night teacher or a staff member heading home. But then the vehicle stopped directly in front of the flagpole, its engine humming softly as the headlights cast long shadows across the ground. Jerry's heart skipped a beat as he noticed the door swing open. A tall man in a dark military uniform stepped out. The man was sharp, his posture perfect, exuding authority from every angle. He wore a cap that matched the uniform, and his expression was one of intense focus, his eyes scanning the area like a hawk searching for its prey. The man didn't seem to notice Jerry. At first, his gaze fixed on the flagpole. But when he did turn toward him, there was no mistaking the recognition in his eyes. Jerry Walters, the man called out, his voice clear and commanding, but not unkind. He took a few steps toward Jerry, his boots clicking against the pavement with each stride. Jerry's mouth went dry as he nodded, unsure of what to say. He had never been in the presence of someone like this before, someone who radiated power without even trying. That's me, Jerry said cautiously, wiping his hands on his overalls. Can I help you? The man studied him for a moment, as though weighing his words carefully. Then, with a slight nod, he responded, You've been doing good work here. The flag's important. The work you're doing is vital. You've been called for a reason. Before Jerry could process this, the man held up a hand, signaling for someone else to step out of the SUV. From the passenger seat emerged a second figure, this one in civilian clothes but wearing a stern expression. The figure walked toward Jerry with the kind of purpose that left no room for doubt. This was not a casual visit. General Armstrong, the man in uniform, said, giving a sharp salute as the civilian figure approached. "This is the man we've been waiting for." The civilian nodded, stepping forward with the same authority as the officer beside him. Jerry felt his knees weaken under the weight of the situation. He hadn't known what to expect, but this felt far beyond anything he could have imagined. The general, now standing before him, extended a hand toward Jerry. "I'm General Armstrong," he said, his voice firm but calm, "and I need you to come with me." Jerry swallowed hard, glancing at the flag one last time before shaking the general's hand. His mind raced with questions, none of which he could put into words. This wasn't a simple repair job anymore. Something had shifted, and Jerry had no idea just how far this rabbit hole would go. "We have a situation," the general continued, his voice grave. "A situation that requires your expertise. You've been chosen for a reason. The work you're doing here is just the beginning." As the general turned to lead him toward the SUV, Jerry hesitated for a moment, still processing everything that had happened. He had always been just a janitor, an invisible man in the background of everyone else's lives. But tonight that was changing. The flagpole, his flagpole, had become a symbol of something much bigger. And Jerry Walters, a man no one had ever noticed, was suddenly at the center of it all. The doors of the SUV slammed shut behind them, and the vehicle roared to life as it pulled away from the school grounds. As they drove into the night, Jerry couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. The drive was long and silent, the only sounds coming from the hum of the SUV's engine and the occasional rustle of papers in the back seat. Jerry couldn't help but glance at the two men sitting beside him, General Armstrong, who was now typing something into his phone, and the officer in uniform, who kept his eyes forward, his posture rigid. Jerry felt out of place, as though he'd stepped into a world where nothing made sense. Just a few hours ago, he had been at the school fixing a flagpole, something he'd done 1,000 times before. Now he was being whisked away in a military vehicle headed God knew where, for reasons he couldn't begin to understand. As the SUV pulled off the main road and onto a secluded military base, Jerry's stomach churned. This wasn't a place for ordinary people, for janitors like him. The security gates, the armed guards, the air of urgency that seemed to hang over the entire place. It was all so far from the life he knew. He had no idea how he had ended up here, but there was one thing he was certain of. This wasn't just about a broken flagpole anymore. The vehicle finally came to a stop in front of a large unmarked building. As they got out, Jerry could see that the area was crawling with military personnel, all moving quickly. Some carrying documents, others talking into radios. The air felt thick with secrecy. The general and the officer led him through the building, past rows of offices, into a small conference room, where a long table was surrounded by several other military officers. They all stopped talking when Jerry entered their eyes, narrowing in curiosity. It was as if his presence had triggered something big. General Armstrong gestured for Jerry to sit down at the table. As Jerry did, he caught the glint of recognition in the eyes of one of the officers. The man leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. The general gave a slow nod. "Yes, he's the one." Jerry blinked, his confusion growing by the second. He didn't know what they were talking about, but it was clear this wasn't a simple briefing. This was something far more intense. The general turned to Jerry, his face serious. "Jerry, what you're about to hear might be hard to believe, but you need to understand something. You've been chosen for a reason. The flagpole wasn't just about a broken piece of equipment. It was a signal to us that you're the one we've been looking for." Jerry's heart raced. "What do you mean I'm just a janitor? I was fixing a flagpole, nothing more." The general's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You don't know who you are, do you?" Jerry shook his head, utterly lost. "That flagpole wasn't just a symbol," the general continued. "It's linked to something much bigger than you realize. You're not just some random guy fixing a flag. You're connected to a legacy that's been hidden for years." The room seemed to close in around Jerry. The officers around the table were all watching him now, waiting for his reaction. He wanted to speak, to ask what the hell they were talking about, but the words wouldn't come. The general stood up, motioning for the officer beside him to bring something forward. It was a large, worn envelope sealed tightly. The officer handed it to the general, who then placed it in front of Jerry. "This," the general said, "contains information about your past, about your family. It's time you knew the truth." Jerry stared at the envelope in disbelief. It felt heavier than any piece of paper he had ever held. For a moment he was tempted to push it away to tell them they were all crazy, but something in the general's eyes told him this was no joke. This wasn't just about a flag or some school project. This was something far more serious. With trembling hands, Jerry opened the envelope. Inside, there was a set of documents, a series of photos, and a letter. As he unfolded the letter, he couldn't believe what he was reading. "Your name is not Jerry Walters," the letter began. "You are the last surviving heir of a distinguished military family. Your grandfather was a decorated officer who served in secret operations during the Cold War. And your father, he was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Navy, stationed on a top-secret mission. The flagpole you were fixing is tied to a mission that goes back generations, and now it's your turn to continue that legacy." Jerry's head was spinning. This was impossible. His mind raced as he tried to process the words, the implications of everything he had just learned. The general's voice cut through his thoughts. "You've been living under an assumed identity for your protection, but now that protection is gone, the mission that your family started is waiting for you to complete it. You've been called in because we need you. Jerry, you're not just a janitor, you're the key." As the weight of the revelation settled in, Jerry felt like he was falling into a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. How could this be true? How could everything he thought he knew about his life have been a lie? But one thing was certain, the man he had been before was gone, and whatever came next, it was up to him to figure out what it all meant. The news spread through the school like wildfire. What had started as a joke, a bit of mockery aimed at Jerry, had now transformed into something completely different. The teachers who had dismissed him, the students who had laughed at his attempts to fix a simple flagpole, all began to feel the weight of the situation. It wasn't just about a janitor anymore. It was about the man who had suddenly become the center of a much bigger world than anyone could have imagined. It started with a few curious whispers. The principal, who had been one of the first to chuckle at Jerry's efforts, received a phone call, a call that would change everything. She excused herself from the classroom mid-lesson, her face pale as she stepped outside to take the call. By the time she returned, her demeanor was completely different, her tone respectful, even cautious. She had been informed through an anonymous source about Jerry's connection to a secret military operation, a family legacy that had been hidden for years. Across the school, the other staff members followed suit. The whispers turned into hushed conversations. They had been wrong to ridicule him. Jerry wasn't just a janitor, he was part of something much larger, something that demanded respect, not mockery. Teachers who had once ignored him now found themselves avoiding eye contact, unsure of how to interact with someone who had, in the space of just a few hours, gone from being a subject of ridicule to a person of immense importance. The students were no different. The ones who had laughed at him, who had snickered as he fixed the flagpole, now stood in stunned silence as they overheard the conversations of their teachers. Some of them even went so far as to apologize, embarrassed by their earlier behavior. The shift was subtle at first, but undeniable. It was as if they had all suddenly realized that Jerry was a man who had carried a burden far heavier than they had ever imagined. And then there was the moment when Jerry walked back through the school after being escorted by the military personnel, his expression unchanged. The halls, once full of chatter and laughter, fell silent as he passed. It wasn't the laughter of mockery that followed him now, but the quiet of respect. Students who had once scoffed at his work now stepped aside, their heads bowed in a strange, reluctant reverence. Teachers who had dismissed him now watched him with a newfound understanding, perhaps realizing that they had underestimated him in ways they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Jerry didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The message had been received loud and clear. The janitor was no longer the punchline of a joke. He was a man of mystery, a figure who had just begun to reveal the depth of his story. The school had seen the shift in the power dynamics, and it wasn't just the teachers and students who had changed their tune. Jerry had too. He was no longer just a worker, someone who could be overlooked. He was someone who had the kind of respect that came from being part of something far bigger than any of them could have anticipated. As the dust settled and the school returned to a new normal, one thing was clear. The events surrounding Jerry had left an indelible mark on everyone involved. What had started as an innocent day of routine maintenance had spiraled into a life-changing moment, revealing not just the hidden layers of Jerry's life, but also a powerful lesson in humility, respect, and the dangers of underestimating people based on appearances. For the students, the lesson was about judgment. It was easy to laugh at Jerry, the janitor who appeared to have nothing more than a simple task on his hands, but they had quickly learned that appearances could be deceiving. The man they had once laughed at was a person of great importance and skill, someone who had lived a life full of experiences they couldn't even begin to fathom. They learned that respect shouldn't be based on a person's job or status, but on the depth of their character, which in Jerry's case had only been revealed at the last possible moment. The teachers too learned a valuable lesson. It was all too easy to dismiss someone who wasn't part of their circle, someone whose role didn't seem to demand attention. But Jerry's story had made them realize the importance of seeing people for who they truly were, not just what they appeared to be. They learned to be more mindful of the way they treated others, no matter their position in life. As for Jerry, the janitor who had once been invisible in the eyes of so many, his life had been forever altered as well. He had never expected that something as simple as fixing a broken flagpole would turn into an event that would change his relationship with the world. But in that brief transformative moment, Jerry had unknowingly taught everyone around him the value of dignity and the power of humility. He had shown them that no matter how small a task might seem, it could hold great significance, and in the process, he had gained something he'd never had before. True respect, not because of his role, but because of the story he carried with him. In the end, Jerry's quiet presence had spoken volumes. His simple act of fixing the flagpole had served as a reminder that life's greatest lessons often come in the most unexpected forms. We may never know the full story behind someone's actions, and it's a lesson we must remember before we judge others too hastily. In the quiet moments following the revelation, Jerry's legacy became a subject of reflection for everyone who had witnessed the events. What began as a seemingly inconsequential act, fixing a flagpole, had blossomed into something far greater. It was no longer just about the janitor who had been underestimated. It was about the impact that one person's actions could have, not only on those directly involved, but on the broader community. Jerry's quiet humility and his unwavering dedication to his work had ignited a spark that would continue to burn long after the day had passed. For the students, Jerry's legacy became a powerful reminder of the importance of humility. They realized that true greatness didn't necessarily come from the things people accomplished outwardly or from their social status, but rather from their character, from the integrity they demonstrated in the small, often overlooked actions. His legacy wasn't about the military officer who had come to his defense, but about Jerry's role in making people rethink their assumptions about others. His actions had forced them to reconsider their own behavior and to challenge their tendency to judge others based on appearance alone. The teachers too found themselves reflecting on the legacy Jerry had unintentionally left behind. His story had reminded them that everyone, no matter their job or station in life, carried with them a wealth of experiences and stories that could teach valuable lessons. They had learned that it was important not to overlook the contributions of those who might seem insignificant at first glance. Jerry's legacy was a call to recognize and respect every individual's story, no matter how small or seemingly trivial their role appeared. As for Jerry himself, his legacy wasn't just about the high-ranking military officer or the Pentagon phone call. It was about the personal transformation he had undergone. In a single moment, Jerry had gone from a man working in the shadows of the school to a figure of respect and admiration. His quiet dignity had left a lasting imprint on the hearts of those who had once mocked him, and that transformation had given him something far more valuable than recognition: the knowledge that his life, his story, and his actions had truly mattered.